Chapter 6 Polynesia and the King. When they had gone a little way through the thick forest, they came to a wide, clear space, and they saw the king's palace, which was made of mud. This was where the king lived with his queen, Ermintrude, and their son, Prince Bumpo. The prince was always fishing for salmon in the river, but the king and queen were sitting under an umbrella before the palace door, and Queen Ermintrude was asleep. When the doctor had come up to the palace, the king asked him his business, and the doctor told him why he had come to Africa. "You may not travel through my land," said the king. "Many years ago a man came to these shores, and I was very kind to him. But after he had dug holes in the ground to get the gold and killed all the elephants to get their ivory tusks, he went away secretly in his ship without so much as saying thank you. Never again shall a man travel through the lands of Jolliginki." Then the king turned to some of the men who were standing near and said, "Take away this medicine man and all his animals and lock them in my strongest prison." So 6 of the king's men led the doctor and all his pets away and shut them in a stone dungeon. The dungeon had only one little window high up in the wall with bars on it, and the door was strong and thick. Then they all grew very sad, and Gub-Gub the pig began to cry, but Chi-Chi said he would spank him if he didn't stop that horrible noise, and he kept quiet. "Are we all here?" asked the doctor, after he had gotten used to the dim light. "Yes, I think so," said the duck, and started to count them. "Where's Polynesia?" asked the crocodile. "She isn't here." "Are you sure?" said the doctor. "Look again. Polynesia, Polynesia, where are you?" "I suppose she escaped," grumbled the crocodile. "Well, that's just like her. Sneaked off into the jungle as soon as her friends got into trouble." "I'm not that kind of bird," said the parrot, climbing out of the pocket in the tail of the doctor's coat. "You see, I'm small enough to get through the bars of that window, and I was afraid they would put me in a cage instead. So while the doctor was busy talking, I hid in the doctor's pocket, and here I am." "That's what you call a ruse," she said, smoothing down her feathers with her beak. "Good gracious," cried the doctor, "you're lucky I didn't sit on you." "Now listen," said Polynesia. "Tonight, as soon as it gets dark, I'm going to creep through the bars of that window and fly over to the palace. And then, you'll see, I'll soon find a way to make the king let us out of the prison." "Oh, what can you do?" "You do," said Gub-Gub, turning up his nose and beginning to cry again. "You're only a bird." "Quite true," said the parrot, "but do not forget that although I am only a bird, I can talk like a man, and I know these people." So that night, when the moon was shining through the palm trees and all the king's men were asleep, the parrot slipped out through the bars of the prison and flew across to the palace. The pantry window had been broken by a tennis ball the week before, and Polynesia popped in through the hole in the glass. She heard Prince Bumpo snoring in his bedroom at the back of the palace. Then she tiptoed up the stairs till she came to the king's bedroom. She opened the door gently and peeped in. The queen was away at a dance that night at her cousin's, but the king was in bed fast asleep. Polynesia crept in very softly and got under the bed. Then she coughed, just the way Dr. Dolittle used to cough. Polynesia could mimic anyone. The king opened his eyes and said sleepily, "Is that you, Ermintrude?" He thought it was the queen come back from the dance. Then the parrot coughed again, loud like a man, and the king sat up wide awake and said, "Who's that?" "I am Dr. Dolittle," said the parrot, just the way the doctor would have said it. "What are you doing in my bedroom?" cried the king. "How dare you get out of prison? Where are you? I don't see you." But the parrot just laughed, a long, deep, jolly laugh, just like the doctor's. And this picture is when the parrot's saying, "I'm small enough to get through the bars." "Stop laughing and come here at once so I can see you," said the king. "Foolish king," answered Polynesia, "have you forgotten that you are talking to John Dolittle, M.D., the most wonderful man on earth? Of course you cannot see me. I have made myself invisible. There is nothing I cannot do. Now listen, I have come here tonight to warn you. If you don't let me and my animals travel through your kingdom, I will make you and all your people sick like the monkeys. For I can make people well, and I can make people ill, just by raising my little finger. Send your soldiers at once to open the dungeon door, and you shall have mumps before the morning sun has risen on the hills, or you shall have. So send your soldiers at once to open the dungeon door, or you shall have mumps before the morning sun has risen on the hills of Jolliginki. And mumps are a disease that make you sick, very sick. When the king began to tremble and was very much afraid, Doctor, he said, it shall be as you say. Do not raise your little finger, please. And he jumped out of bed and ran to tell the soldiers to open the prison door. As soon as he was gone, Polynesia crept downstairs and left the palace by the pantry window. But the queen, who was just letting herself in at the back door with the latchkey, saw the parrot getting out through the broken glass. And when the king came back to bed, she told him what she had seen. Then the king understood that he had been tricked, and he was dreadfully angry. He hurried to the prison at once, but it was too late. The door stood open, the dungeon was empty, and the doctor and all his animals were gone. It's chapter 7, The Bridge of Apes. Queen Ermintrude had never in her life seen her husband so terrible as he got that night. He gnashed his teeth with rage. He called everybody a fool. He threw his toothbrush at the palace cat. He rushed around in his nightshirt and woke up all his army and sent them into the jungle to catch the doctor. Then he made all his servants go too, his cooks and his gardeners and his barber and Prince Bumpo's tutor. Even the queen, who was tired from dancing in a pair of tight shoes, was packed off to help the soldiers in their search. All this time the doctor and his animals were running through the forest towards the land of the monkeys as fast as they could go. Gub-Gub, with his short legs, soon got tired, and the doctor had to carry him, which made it pretty hard when they had the trunk and the handbag with them as well. The king of the Jolliginki thought it would be easy for his army to find them because the doctor was in a strange land and would not know his way. But he was wrong, because the monkey Chi-Chi knew all the paths through the jungle, better even than the king's men did, and he led the doctor and his pets to the thickest part of the forest, a place where no man had ever been before, and hid them all in a big hollow tree behind high rocks. We had better wait here, said Chi-Chi, till the soldiers have gone back to bed. Then we can go to the land of the monkeys. So there they stayed the whole night through. They often heard the king's men searching and talking in the jungle round about, but they were quite safe, for no one knew of that hiding place but Chi-Chi, not even the other monkeys. At last, when daylight began to come through the thick leaves overhead, they heard Queen Ermintrude saying in a very tired voice that it was no use looking any more, that they might as well go back and get some sleep. As soon as the soldiers had gone home, Chi-Chi brought the doctor and his animals out of the hiding place, and they set off for the land of the monkeys. It was a long, long way, and they often got very tired, especially Gub-Gub. But when he cried, they gave him milk out of the coconuts, which he was very fond of. They always had plenty to eat and drink because Chi-Chi and Polynesia knew all the different kinds of fruits and vegetables that grow in the jungle, and where to find them, like dates and figs and groundnuts and ginger and yams. They used to make their lemonade out of the juice of wild oranges sweetened with honey, which they got from the bees' nests in hollow trees. No matter what it was they asked for, Chi-Chi and Polynesia always seemed to be able to get it for them, or something like it. They even got the doctor some tobacco one day, when he had finished what he had brought with him and wanted a smoke. At night they slept in tents made of palm leaves on thick, soft beds of dried grass. and after a while they got used to walking such a lot and did not get so tired and enjoyed the life of travel very much. But they were always glad when the night came and they stopped for their resting time. Then the doctor used to make a little fire of sticks, and after they had had their supper, they would sit round it in a ring, listening to Polynesia singing songs about the sea, or to Chi-Chi telling stories about the jungle. And many of the tales that Chi-Chi told were very interesting, because although the monkeys had no history books of their own before Dr. Dolittle came to write them for them, they remember everything that happens by telling stories to their children. And Chi-Chi spoke of many things his grandmother had told him, tales of long, long, long ago, before Noah and the flood, of the days when men dressed in bearskins and lived in holes in the rock and ate their mutton raw because they did not know what cooking was, never having seen a fire. And he told them of the great mammoths and lizards as long as a train that wandered over the mountains in those times, nibbling from the treetops. And often they got so interested listening that when he had finished, they found their fire had gone out, and they had to scurry around to get more sticks and build a new one, because they were so interested in the stories that Chi-Chi was telling them that the fire would go out. Now, when the king's army had gone back and told the king that they couldn't find the doctor, the king sent them out again and told them they must stay in the jungle until they caught him. So all this time, while the doctor and his animals were going along toward the land of the monkeys, thinking themselves quite safe, they were still being followed by the king's men. If Chi-Chi had known this, he would most likely have hidden them again, but he did not know it. One day, Chi-Chi climbed up a high rock and looked out over the treetops, and when he came down, he said that they were now quite close to the land of the monkeys and would soon be there. And that same evening, sure enough, they saw Chi-Chi's cousin and a lot of other monkeys who had not yet gotten sick, sitting in the trees by the edge of the swamp, looking and waiting for them. And when they saw the famous doctor really come, these monkeys made a tremendous noise, cheering and waving leaves and swinging out of the branches to greet him. They wanted to carry his bag and his trunk and everything he had. And one of the bigger ones even carried Gub Gub, who had gotten tired again, because Gub Gub's a pig. Then two of them rushed on in front to tell the sick monkeys that the great doctor had come at last. But the king's men, who were still following, had heard the noise of the monkeys cheering, and they at last knew where the doctor was and hastened to catch him. The big monkey carrying Gub Gub was coming along behind slowly, and he saw the captain of the army sneaking through the trees, so he hurried after the doctor and told him to run. Then they all ran harder than they had ever run in their lives, and the king's men, coming after them, began to run too, and the captain ran the hardest of all. And then the doctor tripped over his medicine bag and fell down in the mud, and the captain thought he would surely catch him this time. But the captain had very long ears, though his hair was very short, and as he sprang forward to take hold of the doctor, one of his ears caught fast in a tree, and the rest of the army had to stop and help him. By this time the doctor had picked himself up, and on they went, running, and Chi-Chi shouted, "It's all right, we haven't far to go." But before they could get into the land of the monkeys, they came to a steep cliff with a river flowing below. This was the end of the kingdom of the Jolliginki, and the land of the monkeys was on the other side across the river. And Jip the dog looked down over the edge of the steep, steep cliff and said, "Golly, how are we ever going to get across?" And this is a picture. It says, "Cheering and waving leaves and swinging out of the branches of the trees." So there's the monkeys were happy to see them, and Chi-Chi's cousin was there. They were happy that the doctor had arrived. "Oh dear," said Gub Gub, "the king's men are quite close now. Look at them. I'm afraid we're going to be taken back to prison." And he began to weep. But the big monkey who was carrying the pig dropped him on the ground and cried out to the other monkeys, "Boys, a bridge! Quick, make a bridge! We've only a minute to do it. They've got the captain loose, and he's coming on like a deer. Get lively, a bridge, a bridge!" The doctor began to wonder what they were going to make a bridge out of, and he gazed around to see if there were any boards hidden any place. But when he looked back at the cliff, there, hanging across the river, was a bridge all ready for him, made of living monkeys. For a while his back was turned. The monkeys, quick as a flash, had made themselves into a bridge just by holding hands and feet. And the big one shouted to the doctor, walk over, all of you, hurry!" Gub was a bit scared, walking on such a narrow bridge at that dizzying height above the river, but he got over all right, and so did all of them. John Dolittle was the last to cross, and just as he was getting to the other side, the king's men came rushing up to the edge of the cliff. Then they shook their fists and yelled with rage, for they saw they were too late. The doctor and all his animals were safe in the land of the monkeys, and the bridge was pulled across to the other side. Then Chee-Chee turned to the doctor and said, "Many great explorers and gray-bearded naturalists have lain long weeks hidden in the jungle, waiting to see the monkeys do that trick. But we never let a foreign man get a glimpse of it before. We have never let a foreign man get a glimpse of it before. You are the first to see the famous Bridge of Apes." And the doctor was very pleased. And here's a picture of the Bridge of Apes. It says John Dolittle was the last to cross. Okay, that's the end of chapter 7. Okay, I'm going to take a little break and then start with chapter 8. Okay, bye, sweetie. Love you.